Back when I was a high school student at Severian Brothers High School, Westwood, Massachusetts, I was sure that I would study engineering in college. I had my whole future mapped out, planned out, just as I thought it would occur. I enjoyed math and science courses in high school and had taken some additional courses my senior year. I was all set to go, had applied to a number of colleges and was going to go off and study a particular type of engineering. But God had other plans, and after a series of occurrences, particular situations in my life, I realized that really He was calling me to explore the possibility of priesthood. I've never regretted saying yes to that call. And the particular circumstances of that situation, I suppose, would be the subject for another homily. But the point is, God has a plan. God has a purpose for each one of us. And our God is faithful. Throughout this holy season of Lent, we have heard of the unfolding of God's plan, of God's purpose for humanity. The very first Sunday of Lent, the Scriptures focused our minds and hearts on God's covenant, His everlasting love for His people, that relationship that never changes, that never can be broken. And so God promised to Noah the rainbow in the sky as a sign of His covenant, of His faithfulness. And then on the second Sunday, God speaks to Abraham as he's ready to sacrifice his son Isaac. And He promises descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. And in fact, in this morning's first reading, we hear again God speaking to Abraham, to Abram, actually in a section just prior to that Sunday reading from a couple of weeks ago. But God again speaks of His covenant, His purpose, His faithfulness. And then as this Lenten season has moved on, God spoke to Moses on the third Sunday of Lent. Strike the rock, water will come forth as a sign of my covenant. And then in Jeremiah, the fourth Sunday of Lent, the days are coming, says the Lord, when I will make a new covenant. That new covenant is fulfilled in Jesus. Jesus who died on the cross. Jesus who gave His life for you and me. He is the fullness of God's purpose for humanity. The manifestation of God's covenant. He is mercy itself. God has a plan, a purpose, and our God is faithful. My friends, Jesus, who died on the cross, loves you unconditionally. He forgives you completely, and He walks by your side this day and always. Life is not random. God has a purpose, and He is ever with us. In my work at the Pastoral Center in the Archdiocese these past few years, I've had the opportunity, really the privilege, to get to know some of the seminarians a little bit better. I love to hear their story of how God was calling them, and that moment when they realized God's plan, God's purpose. Or the great privilege in which I share as a priest in preparing couples for marriage, and celebrating that beautiful sacrament, and hearing their story when a young man and a young woman fall in love with one another and make that lifelong commitment. At some point they realize, yes, this was all part of God's plan, of God's purpose. My friends, God is ever by our side. His covenant love never changes, not only for humanity, but for you, personally, individually, concretely. So this Lenten season, put your hands into the hands of the crucified Jesus, who loves you and gave his life for you. Trust in his plan. Trust in his purpose. For our God is faithful.